Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdarch here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. Today we're going to be opening up the Monsters Manual and checking out LizardFolk for D&D Monsters, Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm Ted.
Dave.
So we're open to page 204 of that trusty Monster Manual, 5th edition. So what do we think?
Well, I didn't read the LizardFolk up until now, and I really like them. I just checked out their cool art before. But I always kind of shied away from using LizardFolk in previous editions, but I've got to use these guys upon reading it.
So what's different about this edition of the LizardFolk than the previous edition of the Lizardman that you find more appealing?
Well, aside from the name change. No, what I
Oh,
really...
is that what it was? Was it in solidarity to women's rights?
Yeah.
That you avoided the Lizardmen before?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't like Mongrelman, doesn't like Lizardman.
No. That's complete role reversal of what I really think. I really like Lizardman is fine with me, but LizardFolk's cool too.
Cool.
Because there's a race of man, so it's not the race of folks.
Yeah.
Maybe in the South, perhaps.
Ladies, send your hate comments to Nate, the Nerdarch.
I've always been a fan of the LizardFolk, the Lizardman, if you will. I think reptiles are cool, and having a humanoid version that walks around the wilds and's got their own culture, it's quite cool. I think this edition they've really delved into the depths of their culture and talked about they have a different mindset. They're not like humans, elves, and
at least
dwarves.
a half a page is worth.
Oh, well,
they're not mammalian in temperament and thoughts.
So they really don't care about the good and the evil of the act. It's about this is their home. They protect it. And they work in it. So it's like, well, if you're going to come to where they are, it's not like, oh, they're just going to kill you. They're going to try and drive you away, push you towards other natural predators in the area.
Well, what it actually says is they're going to do whatever's fastest.
Oh.
So if it's quickest to just murder you, that's what they would do.
No,
but if you seem too much of a challenge, like if they send people in and they die, well, they're going to most likely
they go to Plan B.
Yeah, Plan B.
Let you get attacked by crocodiles or other hunters. But then it also comes here and says that once LizardFolk forge ties with outsiders, they're steadfast and fierce allies. So you could totally have a swamp that's near civilized settlement and have them have a working relationship.
Yeah, if you set it up and someone takes the initiative to make it happen, absolutely they'll be your friends. But but what they don't like is people trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
They're very much against that.
And I think while they'll be your friend, they'll still eat other sentient creatures or sacrifice them.
Absolutely.
So that kind of is bad for
relations.
That takes race relations to a different level, I think.
Well, I mean,
we're friends with these jungle halflings, but any humans that come by from the settlement, we totally eat them.
Yeah. I just picture the merchant LizardFolk with the halfling merchant, and they're discussing business, and in the background they're eating a human. He's all dressed up and ready to go. So I've always enjoyed the LizardFolk as well, even from AD&D. They don't mention it here, but I've always liked the idea of lizardmen riding giant lizards.
Uh-huh.
Is like their cavalry or whatever, and it makes mention of things like they're dragon worshippers, and they give you 3 different stat blocks for LizardFolk. Your run of the mill commoner LizardFolk, your shaman, and your Lizard King, which the Lizard King was a really cool monster, and is also kind of vicious. So, which means, of course, it was in the Fiend of Folio originally, because that's where all bad things come from in Dungeons and Dragons.
Indeed. So, one of the things that I wanted to touch on here in a previous incarnation, somewhere in a previous edition of D&D, the regular LizardFolk, they say that they dwell in jungles and swamps, but there was some kind of arboreal LizardFolk that lived and dwelt in trees. I know in previous editions the LizardFolk had to be near water and this and that. They wanted to dry, not dry out and that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that's been taken out. But the arboreal lizard folk never really had that, and they were like natural climbers, and like their settlements were literally up in the trees. And I'd like to explore more with that option.
I feel like they went back to basics with this edition. They kind of like dialed back all the custom, like all the
custom stuff,
the 50 different types of elves.
Yeah, like you can figure it out. If you want winged elves, put them in your game. But yeah, like there's no reason why you couldn't do like a lizard folk based off a skink or something, and it lives in the desert.
Right.
Like there's definitely a lot of room to play here. It's cool because they're intelligent. They have their own little culture going on. There's a lot you can do with them. They can be encountered as friendly NPCs depending on if the relationship's already been set up. That could be part of the quest, is figure out how to set that up.
Right.
There's some perils in there because the other 3 guys have tried it before you got eaten.
Or there's been some damage to that relationship. Maybe there's been a turf war or something that wasn't sanctioned by either agency, and it's more of like a political kind of like repairing that, like a diplomacy mission.
Right. Rather
than a fast, it kind of seems like there's like different threat levels with that kind of diplomacy mission.
Well, what would be interesting too is like if you're from a town, a city, village, whatever, that's got an established trade agreement with the lizard folk. You guys have been getting along, doing your thing, and all of a sudden, for no reason at all, like they sever ties, right? So like part of the adventure is trying to reestablish it, and like as you do that, the adventurers figure out, oh wait a minute, the reason why they're not friends anymore is because there's several tribes of lizard folk in this area. And one of them is now being led by a lizard king or a lizard queen, and they're consolidating the power of the lizard folk. So it's like almost like the preamble to what's going to come next. But in addition to that, can you like get these lizard folk to come back to your original pact or agreement? Will they go against the lizard king? Or it sets it up for, oh, we'll come back and hang out and we can buds again, but you got to get rid of this guy. He's really calling the shots here. We can't go against the grain, or our tribe will be annihilated, and what's little is left will just be absorbed.
Right.
So there's there's room for some really cool dynamics in that regards. Again, swamp and jungle encounters are kind of fun to run because you can really be devious with stuff.
Absolutely.
Like we've talked about a lot of different things with like bullywogs and shambling mounds, and I'm sure other things as well. So a lot of that other stuff can apply for the lizard folk.
A crocodile can be, pretty vicious, if used properly. And the fact that, they can have, forget whatever the stats are. I mean, if only their eyes are above the water, they're going to be a little bit harder to, actually notice that this monstrous creature is, lurking close to the party. It's a great place for ambush setups and that.
Well, yeah, and along with the crocodile, you could also have like 50 lizard folk in there, just waiting to spring out like ninjas.
And jungle, they can also be the backdrop for just the terrain. So you're in the jungle, you're in the swamp, and there's lizard folk. They might be just an obstacle to get by, like a roving patrol or something. Could just be.
Well, it would also be really fun is like you hear the drums. You're like in the jungle and you hear the drums and the chanting and stuff like that going on in the background, and you can kind of like tease it out with your players and not let them know what it is for a while. They just hear this like eerie, creepy music. Or I almost think of like King Kong when they put the sacrifice out for Kong, like that going on. Your player, you could really ratchet up the tension and the drama.
So I was thinking somewhat similar, but use the kind of concept that Nate was running at Philly Games Con, and actually have like a chase encounter, sequence where you're trying to get through or get out of the swamp with these guys behind you. I think that could be a pretty cool encounter.
Escape the swamp.
Give you a little
the swamp.
LOTR feel to your game.
yeah.
Oh God, these things are killing us. Run away.
Well, I mean, you can't always have the run.
I absolutely agree. I like the idea. I've had a lot of fun running a chase game. There wasn't as much chasing as I first imagined, but it was a lot of fun.
Got lizard folk swinging through the trees like Tarzan.
Yeah, throwing javelins.
definitely don't separate from the party.
Absolutely.
Or you will be consumed.
So what about like so just out of the book the way they are, they're really interesting. There's a lot of ways to use them. But what about like we always try and do something with a twist and do things kind of interesting. I don't think we've hit on that yet.
You got any ideas?
Well, first off, too, like the one thing about the lizard folk that I've always liked is they've always been shamanistic and druidic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always a cool thing. Going back to the Lizard King example, traditionally the lizard folk are led by their shaman, except for when a Lizard King pops up, then he kind of usurps them.
Right.
And I know you're dying to say usurp, but so there could actually like be political tension from a tribe where maybe the shaman goes outside the tribe to bring in an outsider to deal with the Lizard King because he knows like he can't do it on his own because he's connected to the tribe, so it'll come back to him. But if outsiders did it, then
the balance of power will be restored to him.
Right. And maybe the reward is like the pact with the tribe. Okay, now we're going to do trade with you guys and offer passage through the swamp.
It's definitely definitely a good way to have it manipulated, especially if you're a shaman, does have a good wise situation and is aware or had a previous relationship with,
and like he's like, oh, and by the way, don't be killing my Lizardmen.
Yeah, that would definitely make it far more challenging if it was just an essential assassination and then flee.
Yeah, so there would be some running away from the shaman, like everyone that's on Team Shaman for the lizard folk, and then you've got to deal with the lizard folk that are kind of like absolutely going to be on the Lizard King side, and then the Lizard King himself. Yeah,
so you're kind of like tying their hands behind their back a little bit while they're trying to overcome this obstacle. There's too much at stake with losing the possibility of the political gain. But the other end of it too is like from the shaman's point of view, like they're his people, so he doesn't want them hurt.
Yeah, right.
So there could be interesting things like that,
and they leave it up to interpretation what kind of hold the Lizard King or Queen has over people.
Right.
It seems kind of charismatic, but it also seems kind of like fiendish in nature.
Right.
Well, yeah, because it really like their whole purpose is leading the lizard folk to worship another deity.
Right.
So that deity is actually like a demon lord, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sessanik.
Yeah, so it's very much like that.
Yeah.
That's not the Yanti one, is it?
I don't think so.
Oh, those snake guys look alike to me.
They sound alike too.
Yeah.
Sessanik.
So it's in there somewhere.
Seth.
There's like 3 of them there.
Yeah, well, the other ones aren't in S.
Oh, okay.
Dendar, Mershulk, and Seth.
Who knows? Maybe Seth is double timing.
Maybe.
He's like lizard folk, snake people.
What's the difference?
We're all reptiles
We
here.
all got scales.
I always need more worshippers. Worshipper of the scale. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah. So I kind of, but that's a demon lord. I don't remember that one from the previous editions.
He's a reptilian demon lord.
Which doesn't mean anything. I'm getting old.
He specifically seeks to corrupt and control the lizard folk. So
you could do, if you wanted to do like a higher level campaign, like you could really base it around that whole like earlier levels is like trying to negotiate with the lizard folks. Then something goes wrong, and the shaman's like, "Look, we still want to be boys, but we can't be boys because we got this guy over here, and this guy over here is the Lizard King." And then like he's singing and stuff like that's going on. Yeah, but no, so like it starts off with like the negotiations, setting it up, and then having to reestablish it when the Lizard King's influence is spread, and maybe taking him out, but maybe taking him out is really just the beginning, because now you've pissed off this demon lord who's very upset about that, and maybe that's when the dragon comes. But because he needs to put, obviously the Lizard King fouled, or Queen fouled him, so he has to send an even stronger representative to try and bring the lizard folk in tow and make sure they're worshiping the right person.
And that could either be maybe this dragon was sleeping in the swamp.
He wakes him up.
And
He
wakes him
turns
up.
off the alarm, turns on his alarm clock.
Yeah, be like, it's time for you to do your duty.
No more snooze. Yeah, the Lizard King wasn't working, and that's just one idea. And that's like, you know, I love monsters like this where they could be a complete campaign arc. You know, and there's other things, right, that they don't mention that you could work in there. You know, instead of a dragon or a Lizard King, why not an aboleth?
Yeah.
That somehow got stuck in the swamp. I mean, I think they usually dwell in saltwater, but
I think so.
They're watery things.
But I could definitely see one in the swamp. And you know,
there's nothing to say that you couldn't just modify.
Well, that's true. And some marshes are saltwater too, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that possibility. And so there's probably a bunch of other monsters as well that you can substitute. But the lizard folk just make a great like gateway drug into other monsters. They're a gateway monster. Lizard folk leads you to another monster, a bigger, badder, uglier.
And the great
cleaner.
thing about the bounded accuracy concept is you can use the guys, even the lower level lizard folk, you can use just more of them, and it's still a challenge.
Absolutely.
Rather than like whack-a-mole.
Because I mean, unlike some of the other monsters that are in your trusty book, these guys actually have a pretty sturdy armor class for
decent armor
monsters.
class, all right hit points. I mean, later levels, a ranger or a fighter might be able to take him out one shot.
But 15 AC for 5th edition is pretty decent for a monster.
Yeah, I mean, you figure what, 20th level plus 11 to hit. So like even at 20th level, you can miss with a number other than a 1.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, not many, but the chance is still there. So yeah, I like that, and like I like these monsters. There's different ways to do it. I think I've always loved the concept of the Druid Lizardman as an NPC. It's just interesting and fun.
And he even can do the shape change, which is nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, here they do. That's totally part of the thing.
I'm a crocodile.
I used lizard folk in my family game. Some crocodiles, some lizard folk, a shaman.
Nice.
It's they almost died again because they're kind of tough. So, what do you guys got? Anything for lizard folk? You got story ideas?
Well, I mean, you covered the basics. You covered some of the some of the ways to use them. In an extra way. What have you got?
All right, it's an oldie but goodie. I mean, they're dragon worshippers already, and you know how much I like the dragon cult. As soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, dragon cult. So,
which dragon cult do you speak of?
Whichever one I want. The black dragon cult in this case.
Okay.
So you have lizard folk.
Because there's the cult of the dragon below it. It's Eberron thing. It's different. But go ahead.
Eberron and me, aren't friends right now. I love what they do, but I don't know much about it. So you have the dragon cult as the base for a bunch of story arcs. People disappearing from villages, or whole villages disappearing based on the size of them, or maybe some farmers out back or whatever. So that's how the players can get involved in it. And they come to find that the lizard folk in the area are becoming actively seeking out people, rather than just every once in a while when someone walks into the swamp, they don't come back out. And that leads to more and more of this. Like they notice that there's like infighting because there's like a group of them that all have particular dress and garb that they wear, or like maybe they put a blacked horn, fanged maw on their shield or whatever. So they're from a different club, and then you start leading them into more and more encounters with these guys, rather than the regular lizard folk, and they're bringing sacrifices to this black dragon. It doesn't have to be a ridiculous black dragon; it can just be a little black dragon, but big enough that it's a threat to the Lizardmen, and they're also dragon worshippers, so they're bringing this tribute to the dragon, and it's pretty straightforward. But it could easily be a several event module or something of that nature, and that could lead into. I like to take little things like this and have it be like a several game session adventure. But then that's just kind of weave in, like if you have an artifact or anything that you want to deal with, like a magic item or a situation that you need something from the area, maybe the black dragon has accumulated it, has acquired it over the centuries. So it's actually in their hoard, or you have to appease it with other things besides, well, obviously you probably don't want to appease it with people. So maybe if it's a higher level campaign and you're just trying to get a non-violent resolution to this because it's a dragon, you don't really want to have to fight it. Maybe you could appease it in different ways besides human sacrifice. Well, people sacrifice.
You could do quests, provide other magic items, obviously, stuff of greater value than whatever it is that he's trying to part with.
Yeah, so you can make it combat. You could be like, we're going to come in there, we're going to kill the dragon and the lizardmen that worship it, while trying to leave some of the lizardmen civilians out of the fight. You could also do the bargaining thing where you're role playing with the lizard folk and the dragon to offer them other solutions besides killing people. And then another problem is you could try and do that and then later find out that the black dragon actually really likes to eat people.
Yeah, there's nothing going to appease it.
And it's not going to get appeased. But, it would be still nice to have that angle tried.
Right.
Because, you plan this stuff and you don't really know what the PCs are going to do.
You never know what they're going to do.
It's one things. I didn't think I was going to be attacking the town with a horde of goblins, but I just did it last Sunday. And it was the furthest thing from my mind when I started the campaign.
I always like to have the option prepared if people want to role play with an intelligent adversary, just because like you want to add the role playing whenever your PCs are seeking it out. And there's discussions about oh well, can you role play yourself through every encounter? Well, probably not. Some things are just going to naturally fight, and some things are going to have their talking limit. And then it's like, all right, enough of this. I'm just going to swing.
And a good way to kind of, I don't know, not push them in the direction of doing role playing, but I found that a best way to kind of either say, well, it's probably going to be a combat encounter, or it's probably not, is to have generic farmer tip. So if a generic ignorant farmer, like the stereotype kind of backwoods farmer, says, oh yeah, there's no reasoning with a dragon, you just can't do that, he'll just eat you. And you say it like that, and then they're like, we should probably try and reason with that dragon, because this farmer doesn't know nothing.
maybe. Or they'll be like, oh my God, this guy's so wise.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I've kind of gauged my, they've put this farmer on a pedestal that I have, but
is this like the Everwin's bread?
Huh?
Keep going back to them.
Well, yeah, he sold them they like were flush with cash, and they bought the first farm animal they saw on the tractor. Like, we want to buy that mule. Oh, they want that donkey. And that cart and all the vegetables in it. And I was like, boy, you guys don't have burning holes in your pocket. But so the regular farmer, I'd say, normally I can kind of get them one way or the other, but
nice.
That's getting off topic. But see, there's ways to kind of like load the queue in a way of where you kind of think they could go. But that's
I'm also
like
thinking
different.
Something that might be fun and interesting.
What was that?
Bullywog, LizardFolk, gang war. Yeah, baby.
They're definitely in the same territory.
They are in the same territory. So, like, maybe the supply lines are being disrupted from the town or village, wherever you're from, with the merchant, and it's because of this war that's going on. And maybe it's affecting things in other ways. If it's near coastal waterways or inland waterways that are valued, both sides are attacking anything that comes through. There's some complications that definitely arise from that.
Also, what if there is some shamanic power at work, expanding the territory, literally through changing what was regular terrain into murky swamp, or like growing a jungle really fast. I mean, they have plant growth and a few other powers that mean that like they could probably enough of them focus on it. They could probably crop up a forest pretty quick.
Well, the other side too is like Bullywogs and LizardFolk working together, because there is this outside influence, whether it's a cursed artifact in the center of the swamp that's actually doing it all, or an individual. Like, there's different ways you could definitely go about it.
Oh yeah. And
then you could definitely do almost like a Krishnaban.
Nice.
From RA. What is it?
Crystal Shard. Crystal Shard.
Yeah, Crystal Shard. And do something like that that's embedded in the center of the swamp, that's actually emanating out these evil magic energies, and it's kind of corrupting everything around it. It's pushing out the swamp and bringing more of the swamp creatures under its sway. So things that might not necessarily work together normally are now working together, and that might be the first sign that there's a problem.
Right.
Bullywogs are palling around with LizardFolk. Well, Bullywogs are very evil. LizardFolk really aren't. They just are.
Right.
And so so you had these like little clues going on.
Yeah, my idea is kind of opposite to all the stuff we've talked about. Is what happens if there is essentially a shared problem for like a humanoid settlement and the lizard folk? What if like all of a sudden a disease started cropping up in town, and you wind up doing the research, and while you can find the cure, you can't apply the cure faster than it's spreading. So you have to find out what the cause is. You do some research, it leads you to the swamp. You get to the swamp and you find out that through some rough negotiations, that it's in the lizard folk settlement as well.
Lizard influenza.
And they're not sure where it's coming from.
For the common folk, though, lizard flu.
Yeah, lizard flu.
So you have to then do more research, and once you wind up getting the whole situation resolved, then you can lead into the angle of negotiations.
Sounds like once you got it all resolved, you have a degree. A lot of research going on there.
Well, I mean, like sometimes you've got a
sometimes
knowledge.
it's physical science research. You got to be out there in the field.
Sometimes you have the
That's
knowledge,
the internship.
the knowledge characters, or the knowledge
Go catch
parties.
this.
Sometimes you've got those smart characters, and you want to challenge them. And since you're going into rough terrain, you're gonna need all hands on deck to be able to protect the knowledgeable characters. So I mean, it's a cool research expedition into dangerous lands. I don't know. It sounded pretty cool to me.
Oh, I like it.
No, it's good.
We were just interjecting funny. That's all. I did like
then,
it.
Once you actually resolve the issue, you could then find out whether the part of your town would be interested in, hey, well, we helped out the lizard folk through this problem. Maybe they're open to negotiations. But since you've already led on that your town is affected by this disease, that like, yes, you say you cured the lizard folk, but you weren't doing it just for you. You were doing it for your own folk. So you haven't done anything for them in their eyes. So you'd have to start the negotiations, essentially all over again to, have a peaceable treaty between you guys.
What if there's a faction in the lizard folk that decide that even though you came and helped them, it was actually the humans that are spreading the disease?
And then what if there was a whole bunch of people in the village that were like, lizard flu? Those damn lizard folk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because there would be information kind of going back and forth, and if not all lizard folk speak common, and
tridents and torches,
not all humans are going to speak draconic. So it's only what information is going to get passed around, and how rumors spread. How people twist the truth. So I mean, it's very easy to have.
So it turns into politics as well.
Yes.
And then it turns out that some chameleon that some kid got out of the forest was really the patient zero.
Yeah. Who knows? But with that, you guys tell us what you think. Add your ideas below in the comments while you're at it. Like, subscribe, and share.
You can check us out on nerdarchy.com.
Those who join the conversation over on Reddit.
So until next time, stay nerdy.